I do not know how long I spent there, in that space between life and death where breath turns to emptiness and light turns to cold darkness. It all started with one simple but terrible thought: this is the end. I didn't see the bright lights and angels that books and sermons promise. Instead, I was engulfed in a vast abyss, in which there was nothing, no hope, no fear. Just a silence deeper than anything I've ever experienced. And then he appeared. At first I couldn't believe my eyes. A figure carved out of darkness and history stood before me. His face, something I'd studied in textbooks, heard in old people's stories, and seen on screens, but then, in that void, it came alive and looked right at me. Hitler. His eyes are cold, but not empty, rather filled with the same terrible power that shook the world. He spoke without words, and his voice sounded like an echo of the fall of civilizations. "You didn't come here by accident," he seemed to say. I felt the air around me grow heavy, as if I had stepped into an unknown pit where all the sins of humanity are hidden. And in that moment, I realized that this is not just a meeting with the spirit of the past, it is a meeting with my own inner hell. His presence was a symbol of the evil that seeps into people's hearts until they realize their own darkness. In Hitler's eyes, I saw not only the villain of history, but the reflection of those fears and shadows that live in me: my doubts, pride, hatred, and fear of death. "You will only be able to leave this place when you are no longer afraid to look inside yourself," the prophecy seemed to run through my head. I found myself on the threshold of truth, which cannot be entered by half measures. Either I will submit to terror, or I will find the light hidden deep in the abyss itself. And then my real battle began, not for my life, but for my soul. I walked, or thought I walked, through corridors carved not out of stone or air, but out of memories. It was a maze. Its walls were made up of shadows of my actions, echoes of anger, humiliation, and indifference. Everything I'd ever allowed to happen stood before me like a grim gallery. Above each turn are inscriptions, not in letters, but in feelings: you knew, you were silent, you turned away. Once again, he appeared. Hitler walked beside him, but not like a judge or a demon. He was like a mirror, here hideous, deformed, but true. He spoke without opening his mouth. "Each person is the architect of his own hell. I have only become an expression of what millions have allowed in themselves. I am the consequence." I wanted to shout, "You're lying. You're a monster." But the words disappeared before they appeared. After all, I already knew that the truth was that he wasn't just showing himself, he was showing us. People. Our ability to justify evil when it seems convenient. Our laziness to resist when it requires sacrifice. "Why are you here?" I finally asked. He turned his face toward me, which this time was not a human face, but a mask made up of 1,000 faces. Men, women, and children. Victims. And those who caused them suffering. "I am not your death. I am your truth. You asked me why you were here. But you have to ask, why?" Suddenly, the walls of the maze began to move. They were shrinking. The air was thick as butter. Everything in this world was alive and hungry. Every wall, every stone is a living reminder of my inaction. And then I realized, hell is not a place. It's a process. This is honest and merciless self-knowledge. And if I want to get out, I have to go through all this. Don't turn away. Don't forget. To accept. Hitler disappeared, leaving behind a phrase that seemed to have been burned into space. "You haven't even reached the gate yet. Go deeper." When the walls of the maze finally disappeared, I found myself in silence. But this was no ordinary silence, it was absolute, overwhelming. The sound of my own breathing here was blasphemous, as if I were breaking an ancient taboo. A huge hall stretched out in front of me. Its ceiling was lost in darkness, and the floor was made of black, almost mirror-like glass. It wasn't my face that was reflected in it, but someone else, distorted, crying, doomed. They were the faces of those who wanted to scream but couldn't. There were figures in this hall. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. Their lips were sewn shut with light, not with threads, not with iron, but with something more terrible, inner guilt, fear, and shame. They stood motionless, but their eyes were filled with terror, a scream, a plea. Each figure was a soul that was speechless. But I could hear their screams inside me. Their voices didn't ring in the air, they vibrated in my bones like the echoes of an earthquake. I knew, but I didn't say anything. He was my brother, but I averted my eyes. I killed, and I was applauded. Somewhere among them I noticed the face of a child. He wasn't even 10 years old. His eyes were filled with a darkness that he shouldn't have known. And yet he knew. He was here. And then I understood, this place is not for punishment. This is the place for awareness. A silhouette appeared in front of me, not Hitler. Someone else. Faceless, tall, wearing a robe made of words. His clothes moved with my thoughts. He said without a sound. They are the ones who didn't dare. Those who knew the truth existed, but preferred comfort. Hell is not created by evil. Hell is the eternal result of silence before evil. I looked down. My own reflection in the floor was no longer mine. It trembled, changed. I have seen moments in my life that I considered insignificant, when I allowed others to be offended, when I did not support those who shouted about injustice, when I was silent for fear of being rejected. All these are bricks in the walls of this hall. Suddenly, all the figures turned to me. At the same time. And in the silence, in a voice that didn't exist, they said, "You can still talk. But are you listening?" The hall shook. The walls began to close in. The light was gone. All that remained was the inner voice that I'd ignored for too long. Then I closed my eyes and whispered, "I'm listening." And only then did the path open further into the depths. Below. A place where the effects, not the souls, dwell. I didn't go. The floor beneath me moved of its own accord, as if it wanted to take me to a place where the answers were as scary as the questions. The room I entered was like an old library, but with no windows, no doors, no lights. Shelves stretched up into infinity, filled not with books, but with skulls. Each skull was covered with writing, ancient, living, sinister. They pulsed like the veins on a beast's body. There was a table in the center of the room. And on it is a mirror. But the mirror didn't reflect my appearance. It showed moments. I saw myself. Again and again. It was like a movie that couldn't be rewound. Moment by moment. I'm 16, I see a classmate being humiliated, and I turn away. I'm 21, I hear a colleague get fired unfairly, and I don't say anything. I'm 30, sitting in luxury, laughing, and ignoring what I live off. Every choice is like a nail. And each nail is in my own soul. I turned away. My heart was pounding. I wanted to scream. But who would have heard? And then I heard it. Whisper. From the corner of the room. Where the darkness was denser than matter. "Why are you here?" It was a woman's voice, old but clear. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The darkness parted. A woman stepped out. All in white. Her face was impossible to remember, as if every second she was someone else, mother, sister, victim, killer. "You think you came here because you killed someone?" Her voice was as cold as icy water running down your spine. I nodded. Instinctively. Wrongly. She raised her hand to point at the mirror. "No. You're here because you didn't realize what you did. And because I didn't believe it could be otherwise." The mirror lit up. And in it I saw him. Hitler. He was standing alone, in some desert covered in ash. He didn't age. He didn't suffer, he understood. And that was enough. "He's not the king of this place," the woman said. "He's his mirror. His vessel. He's not the reason you're here. It's because you thought you didn't look like him. But anyone who refuses to acknowledge their darkness becomes its shadow." I fell to my knees. What should I do? I asked through trembling lips. She sat down next to him. Don't deny it. Don't make excuses. Don't run away. You must pass. Until the very end. Where neither demons nor saints will meet you, but only yourself. But you're real. She was gone. Leaving only silence behind. And a mirror. Which was now beginning to crack. Light shone through these cracks. It hurt my eyes. He called forward. I got up. He stepped into the light. When I got to the other side of the world, the air was as thick as water. The space around them didn't follow any logic. The sky here was dark, but not black, it breathed like the chest of a sleeping animal. The ground cracked beneath their feet, as if it couldn't stand the memory of those who walked on it. I found myself on the edge of a vast plain. There was a figure in the center. Lonely. Stationary. Like a rock. His back was to me. And I knew who it was. Although there was no portrait, there were no sounds, no banners, no slogans, only the weight of a presence that made one's knees buckle. Hitler. But it wasn't really him. He was devastated. His silhouette was barely able to stand. His arms hung limply. His clothes are gray, without a uniform, as if the shadow was trying to dress as a human. I approached. Step by step. Every step I took made my skull ache, as if invisible fingers were being squeezed. You're not afraid of me? No, he said. His voice wasn't demonic. On the contrary, it's too mundane. Dry. Like dust in an archive. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say that I'm afraid. But at that moment I realized that I wasn't afraid of him. I'm afraid of what it means. You're not here because of me, he said. No one's here because of me. They're here because they don't believe they can be like me. He turned around. His face, it had no shape. His eyes were black holes. The face is like a fingerprint, like you're looking at wax that's been pressed down by someone's hand. You all think someone is evil. Not something inside you. This is your mistake. I couldn't answer. I was paralyzed by the truth that suddenly popped up in my mind. He wasn't the scariest person, he was a mirror to the world. And the world keeps looking into it, but it doesn't see itself. Every time you were silent, he continued, every time you defended yourself, every time you spoke, it's none of my business, you held out your hand in me. Like millions of others. I am not a person. I am a mechanism. And it still works. I looked down. But he went on. And you want redemption? Excuse me? He grinned, and it wasn't a human grin. He's not here. There is only knowledge. Understanding. And the path. But it doesn't lead back. I looked into his eyes, into an abyss where there were no pupils, no light. Only reflections. My own. He held out his hand. There was a rock in it. There was a single sentence carved on it, in Latin. Nemo fugit umbrum suam. No one runs away from their shadow. Take it, he said. And carry it. Until you understand what it means to be truly human. I took the stone. It was light. But my heart immediately became heavier. The ground beneath his feet began to crumble. Hitler was gone. Dissolved into dust, like an illusion that could no longer be maintained. And I started to fall. But not down. Deep down. The fall was not a fall in space, it was a fall in time and memory. I rolled through a series of memories, like flipping through an ancient scroll, where every word was my life choice, every line my actions. But then the scene changed. I found myself on a dusty street in the small town where I had spent my childhood. The place was distorted like a reflection in a cracked mirror, the houses seemed taller, the faces of passers-by more severe, and the air was bitter. There, among the gray facades, I saw people who lived their own lives, far removed from the great events of history, from politics and ideas that I was once proud of. They were ordinary, simple, inconspicuous, forgotten. But it was these faces, these souls, that really felt heavy. A few familiar faces flashed through the crowd. People I'd never noticed in my life, people whose lives didn't make the headlines. The tears, the loneliness, the struggle with inner demons, it was here, in these quiet, nameless souls. Suddenly, a ghost appeared in front of me, not a person, but something elusive, made up of shadows and light. He spoke without words, his voice ringing in my head, chilling me to the bone. You're blinded by your pride. You were looking for greatness, not understanding. But it is these people, tiny sparks of light, who determine the weight of the soul in eternity. I watched as these simple souls experienced pain, made mistakes, and went to forgiveness and love as if they were going to war. They didn't perform great deeds, they didn't commit great crimes, they just lived. Do you see their suffering? What is it? The voice asked. In every moment of compassion, in every act of kindness that they manage to give to the world, there is a power that cannot be measured. I suddenly felt a pang. If I hadn't been able to see their value in my lifetime, what would I do now? What if the weight of my actions doesn't wash away in the face of this simple yet profound truth? What should I do? I said, my heart pounding in my chest. Learn to love, said the ghost, not with words, but with actions. After all, the shadow that you carry will disappear only when you start reflecting light. It was then that I felt the ground become firmer under my feet, and the darkness around me dissipated slightly. But there were new encounters and trials ahead of me that would destroy old beliefs and build up new foundations for my being. When the light began to envelop me again, I found myself in a strange space that didn't look like earth or sky. It was a place where time stood still, a world between worlds, where souls languished in expectation, where there was no peace, but a painful hope. A figure stood before me, dim and ghostly, but with eyes filled with pain and longing. It was my conscience, which still preserved my every action, every word, every thought. She spoke in a silent voice that felt like an icy wind inside me. You lived in a world of illusions and pride. You made choices without thinking about where they would lead the souls around you. You ignored weakness and suffering as a sign of weakness. I felt a chill envelop me, but in that chill was born the bitterness of awareness. Look at them, said conscience, pointing. The souls you considered insignificant, and the ones you rejected. They are here, trapped by your decisions and the decisions of others like you. Figures began to appear around us, people I'd known in my life, enemies, victims, friends, traitors. They weren't evil, but they were vulnerable, lost. Each soul seemed to be enclosed in a transparent cage, not visible, but irresistible. Their eyes are filled with despair and longing for forgiveness. Why are they here? I asked, my voice shaking. Because you didn't see their pain, didn't hear their prayers, didn't give them love, conscience answered. You were part of a system that encourages cruelty and alienation. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. The shadows of the past held me in their arms. Is there a way out? I asked, as if I were praying. There is a way out, said conscience. But it doesn't lie in the outside world. It starts in the heart. You must let go of your pride, accept humility, and devote yourself to service and love. At that moment, I felt a growing warmth in my chest, a faint but real light of hope. A new door appeared before me, shrouded in a glow. It was a path to redemption, a path that not only I, but also the souls I met, would have to follow. When I crossed the threshold of that glowing door, a thick fog enveloped me, as if the memory itself was dissolving in it. It was a place of oblivion, where souls fell, deprived of hope and abandoned by the world of the living. I saw them, silent and alone, faceless, but with eyes that told stories of pain and longing. Their voices were only whispers, barely audible, like the echo of distant memories. Each soul bore the burden of forgotten suffering, resentments, betrayals, cut-off dreams, and unfinished business. They did not know peace, because no one remembered them, no one prayed for their release. One of the souls approached me. She was young, her eyes a mixture of hope and fear. You came here, she whispered. Can you see us? Yes, I said, I see you. We are the forgotten ones, who fell through the cracks of the world. We are waiting for someone to hear us, remember us, and pray for us. Her words made my heart sink. I realized that for many people, death is not the end, but the beginning of a new suffering, when the world of the living ceases to give light and love. A soft chorus drifted through the fog, the whisper of thousands of souls intertwining in a prayer for salvation, for a second chance. I felt responsible, as if the entire weight of oblivion had fallen on my shoulders. What can I do? I asked, my voice shaking. Speak of us, pray for us, remember us, said the soul, and thus you give us life. Suddenly the fog lifted, and I saw a long corridor with mirrors, each reflecting the faces of the forgotten. I realized that these souls are not just shadows of the past. They are waiting for my intervention, my love, my choice. And if I can bring their voice to the world of the living, perhaps a new light will light up for them. When I opened my eyes again, the world seemed both old and strange. Everything was familiar, but there was a flame inside me that couldn't be extinguished, the knowledge of what I'd seen, the voices of oblivion, and the encounter that had changed me forever. I couldn't be the same anymore. I realized that my life is now a ministry. Serving those who are forgotten, those who wander in the shadows between worlds. Every morning I got up with a heavy heart, but also with the determination to tell people the truth that I learned on this journey. I began to write, speak, and find ways to bring the voice of forgotten souls to the living, hoping to awaken compassion and faith in the power of memory and prayer. But the shock wouldn't let go. What I'd met in hell wasn't just a punishment. It was a picture of a world where souls suffer not only for their deeds, but also for the indifference of those who remained alive. When I met Hitler, I didn't see the demon he was in the legends, but a lonely, lost soul trapped by his evil, which made me think more deeply about the nature of evil and forgiveness. I realized that each of us is the creator of our eternal path, and even the darkest hearts can become the beginning of light if they hear the call of repentance. My heart opened with fear and hope at the same time. I realized that I had been given not just a lesson, but a responsibility, to bring light into the darkness, to fight the oblivion and indifference that destroys millions. The truth I have learned is a heavy burden. But without it, there is no salvation. I look in the mirror and see another person, a person who went through hell to become a light guide. And now that my path is clear, I know that it is my duty to live so that none of the forgotten will be left without a voice.